it was actually my first perfect run. I didn't concede a single VP all weekend.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I think 52-0. I went VP wise over the weekend, so that was nice.
It was a weird one for me because I was just hanging out at home, not doing anything that weekend, and I was sort of following along, and I was like, okay, it's doing pretty well, that's fine. And then there was like a load of weird noise coming out, and people were talking about a load of bullshit. And then when I actually found out what happened, I was like, oh, why was this so controversial?
Yeah.
You know?
Did you want to touch on the alleged controversy while we are here, Jake?
Yeah.
Or
I mean, we've talked about it plenty, so I'm happy to discuss it now. Yeah, do you want me
I
to
will.
just
I
run
will. I
through
will leave the
the
floor
gist
to
of
you.
what
So.
happened?
Yeah.
So yeah, basically, in Ardacon, when you're in the World Championships, you can split yourselves into teams for your entry, and then you're guaranteed to not play against members of your team unless it's the final round. I think it is.
Yeah.
But because I was quite a late addition to Ardacon, most of the people that I already knew that were going were already in teams, so I had to try and find a spot in one last minute. So I joined the Guardians team. Dewey and Jamie and everyone invited me.
Well, that's why you were wearing the top that weekend. I didn't know that.
Yeah. I'm an honorary Guardian now. So yeah. But I actually, because I'm really good friends with Jasmine Tetley, who lives in Nottingham as well. We drove down together. And she's also on the Seventh City Crusaders team. Big up the Crusaders.
Big up,
be the
shout out.
Best team this year. Woo!
Although you have been ahead of us for quite some time, which I haven't been able.
It's not going to change, Elliot.
No,
unless you guys win both.
I'd pulled my weight at some point in this year, then maybe, but no, doesn't look like it.
I mean, Ash and Jay are just carrying your team, right?
But they can't carry it anymore, though. Someone else has to step up.
Yeah.
Sam and Adam, to be fair, have done pretty good shifts.
Yeah,
they've done well, but the rest of the team
decent,
haven't been able. Yeah, so anyway.
Yeah, but you're popping you guys up into. Is it third you're in now?
We're third. We've been in third.
Yeah, the Guardians couldn't maintain the challenge ever since Ash and Jay both got 400 between them. It was like,
God, we're talking like 4, 5, 6 months ago now. You know, they're in the dust.
It's been a while. I think
they're in the dust.
They are in the dust. It's true.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry.
The spot from you now. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah. So because I went down with Jasmine, but she's on my Crusaders team, but not on my team for Ardacon. Yes. We ended up playing in round 6 because we could have matched up against each other. Yeah. And there was just this big. We ended up getting quite a drawy scenario. It was assassination, I think.
Yeah,
assassination. And she had a really heavy shooting army. I had a really heavy shooting army. So we did what I thought is quite typical in that situation is neither one of you wants to push against the army because typically whoever pushes first loses the shooting war and then loses the battle. So that was the situation. Ended up in a draw, and then we both went through into round 7, the championship round together. Yeah. Because the other 169 people, no one else was on 5 wins at that point. So
no one else was on enough of a TP situation to overtake you guys.
Yeah,
which is interesting because it's like an incentive set, isn't it? Because you're in the stronger position. You can't not qualify from the championship round unless you throw away a massive defeat.
Yeah,
and she's got crossbows, not bows, so she can't be proactive to try and win the game without putting herself at a massive disadvantage.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's
the point breakdown afterwards as well, and there was even if I'd lost 12-0, I was still guaranteed to go into the championship round. So at that point, I'm just like, well, cool. I'm just going to do what makes sense for me, and she did the same thing for her.
Yeah,
and
you're playing for the best and most likely outcome. It doesn't. Yeah. It's not an offensive situation in the slightest. But obviously, when you're at home and you're not there and you have no context, and multiple people have been like, "Have you heard what happened?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know what happened." And then you hear about it's basically just a bunch of Italian people getting pissed off about things.
Yeah.
Which is just I don't know. It's ridiculous because when you actually hear about it properly, you're like, "Oh, I would do something very, very similar in that situation, probably."
Yeah.
So it's ludicrous. It creates a really strange dynamic as well, where it becomes like, how do you have to play the game, and do you have to satisfy the people who have no business being involved? It's like, what is going on?
Yeah,
it just doesn't add up at all. Anyway, suffice to say, I don't think that anything untoward happened in the slightest in this situation.
Thank you. Yeah, I remember it was. I'll be honest, it was the first time where I've actually sat back and thought, I might actually just quit this game because I got so much abuse from people who I've never met just messages out the blue, out the blue, just like, I can't believe what you've done. You should be ashamed of yourself. You're a scumbag. Blah blah blah. And I
Yeah.
just sat there home
Did not know
thinking,
that.
oh my god,
That is awful.
what the hell?
People
That is
don't realize the situation becomes very hostile very quickly. Like I would say it's a minor equivalent of this, where someone, it was Nicky Myland, to be clear. I don't know if he listens to this, but he made a post after I won IMPS 2021. He made a post basically vague posting about two players he played, who coincidentally happened to be me and Sean Sproul, who were the two people who finished above him on the podium mysteriously. You know, the two games he didn't win, and he sort of alluded to the fact that things had been really, really shitty and stuff. And it was like, even just the tiniest possible, like the one game scenario where like one person and his group of friends were sort of making sort of snide comments on the Facebook page was enough to really hurt my enjoyment of games for a little while. It was until basically I was confident that those people weren't going to be present at a lot of tournaments that it was like, okay, I stopped thinking about it. So I can really empathize, and I can't imagine how much worse it would be when you basically got like 3 different international communities separately being told that, hey, this guy's a cheating scumbag who fixed Ardacon. And it's like, guys, you do realize the problem here is entirely the Ardacon format and not the person in the pool, right? Like if you were in that position, you do the same thing, and that's not even possibly up for debate. It's like, you didn't do everything that in your power to lose the game, and therefore you've become the bad guy to a bunch of people you've never met. I think that's fucked up.
Yeah.
It was
until
really
you're
luckily there's so many people that just were like, no, ignore them. You're great. We love you. Blah blah blah. They really sort of like rallied around, and it made it all worth it actually. So
but it's a scary
that's
thing,
one of the
isn't
things
it?
about the British community is that you're all so supportive and you're so nice and you're just like great people. So
yeah, I was going to ask. I'm sure not much, if any, of this sort of contact that you received was from people within the British community.
Only 2 or 3 people that I've never met. Anyone that knows me was like, nah, it's bullshit, don't worry about it.
Exactly. Yeah. So the people who matter, and it's only when until you're in those shoes, like you wouldn't know, to touch on what you said, Farmer, like you wouldn't, until you're in that position, like you wouldn't have to make that call. But if people were in that position, then they would do the same thing. Like,
well, and again, it's the Ardacon format is entirely to blame, because if you make, like, the way I see it is, if you don't want to have a situation like this where people are incentivized to be like, well, why would I take a massive risk when essentially we can just have another game where we're both guaranteed first and second, and there's no one can stop us. There's no reason not to do that. Just make the championship round be like the top 4 tables or something. Top 8 players all play again, and then suddenly the podium is never going to be decided in this way, and you don't have the person who came 3rd and 4th being like, well, if I got another game, I might have been able to beat them, because then you'd be like, well, I don't want to play for a draw in round 6 or whatever, because then you're worried that round 7 might go against you, and then you'd end up not being on the podium. So it's like that immediately fixes the incentive set. It's like, it's not a difficult decision, and it's not, you shouldn't have to play irrationally just because other people think that they want to have a better chance of winning. Like, when you really lay it out there, it's ludicrous. Like, I'm mad at you for playing conservatively in a way where there's nothing to lose for you, when I would only stand to benefit if you lost massively. It's like, you see how ridiculous that is?